Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
You want a quality education that will give you a skill set that will make you marketable for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach from Metro Atlanta.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent, also from Atlanta, currently in North Carolina.
And I'm David Williams, and I'm a dad from Chicago, Illinois.
This week in the news, Supreme Court will hear NCAA case on college athlete pay. The case could upend the college sports business model. An article by Leah, Nylen, and Juan Perez Jr. from Politico. Mark and Anika will discuss what is the role of the college financial aid certified planner and paying for college. Our question from a listener is, I would love to hear the tips and strategies about regular decisions, since it seems the bloodbath will continue in the RD round. And that is from a Twitter follower.
First question from Twitter.
Our interview is part 3 of 4 from Chika Nwosu, Reflections on My Freshman and Sophomore Year at the University of Miami. And our long-awaited college spotlight is the University of South Florida.
Thank you for your patience, everybody, on that spotlight. Just a couple announcements, and Dave and I will dive in. One I should have shared back when it came out, which was mid-September, but we never mentioned it. The Comment app has decided to drop a question that used to ask about student discipline. And I'm just going to mention it now, and Dave and I will come back and take it up later in the next 3-4 weeks with in the news segment, asking or probing why they decided to drop it, what the ramifications of all of that is. So look forward to that in the next few weeks. Also, a few weeks ago, I said a Christmas gift to you guys was to just go on to Spanish Help Today, sign up for a couple free hours of tutoring with my daughter. And that's my gift to you. But now I want to share you my New Year's gift, because this is our New Year's edition, Dave. This will go on New Year's.
Awesome.
So every year I take a couple students under my wing that I work with for a substantially reduced price. And I'm looking for 2 new students for the 2021 year. And so they need to be Pell Grant eligible, and they need to be highly motivated and highly motivated, high achieving. And I'm looking to take them under my belt. So if you know of somebody like that and you know they wouldn't have the resources to work with a college coach, just reach out to me, because I want to take them under my wing and take them all the way through the process and do all components of the college process. It's one of the more fulfilling things I do every year. Dave, you referred somebody to me a couple years ago that I took on.
Yes,
that had helped you with one of your practices and as a volunteer in the emergency room. And so they can come from anybody. They can come from a podcast listener. They can come in for everybody. Yeah. So, and that could be you as a listener yourself, by the way. You could say, you know what? That sounds like me. That sounds like my child. Feel free to nominate your own child. Look forward to picking up a couple new people. It's one of the fun things I do every year. Okay, Dave, it is time for a tip, and then it's time for vernacular. And I'm warning you right now, I got a hard one for you. So just telling you right now, strap up. The tip, students, please don't spend a lot of time. I'd prefer no time on the websites of College Confidential or Reddit.
Please.
Now, I have to admit there are some jewels there, but it'd be like this. It'd be like Dave saying to me, "Hey, Stuck, let's go to this scrapyard here. This junkyard has some incredible auto parts in it. You can really pick up some great parts for your car." But we go there, and he's a car expert, and he can tell the difference between the trash and the junk. But 95% of it's junk. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to get caught up in the junk. And that's what happens to people with Reddit and College Confidential. And I was talking to one of the families I'm working with recently, and I was noticing that the student is having a lot of challenges. She seems to keep thinking, that school's not that good. I don't know about that school. And finally her mom says she's spending so much time on College Confidential. I'm like, that explains everything.
Yep.
there's so many people on there that don't know what they're talking about, and they pose like they do. And the website is consumed with status. Yep. And so I see it as a cesspool. And yeah, there are some senior level people in there, and occasionally there's a good article that's linked, but most people will not be able to differentiate the trash from the treasure, and they'll get caught up and they'll start feeling bad about themselves. These are not good websites for your mental health.
They're a bunch of juvenile know-nothings verbalizing out of their posterior.
Oh, and they're saying, chance me. Tell me what my chances are. And someone says, oh, this was my test score. And then a 16-year-old says, your chances are really good. Your essay's great. Oh, yeah, right. I cannot even tell you what college admissions people think about these websites. They think they're just the bane of their existence because there's so much nonsense on there, and they make people think that they're experts. Yeah. So I just had to say that Reddit and College Confidential are very, very, very toxic.
Yes. So everybody.
This is the really, really hard one.
Uh-oh.
And it's also going to lead to a point that I'm going to make too. And I was going to make it in the announcements. I said, you know what? I'll do it in the vernacular. Student aid index. Student aid index.
Ooh, that's for me, right?
That's for you.
Oh, student aid index. Okay, wait, got my thinking cap on. We're going to break this down. Student aid. Well, we can figure that one out. And then index. Okay, so it's got to be a way of basically figuring out, indexing, organizing the student aid. I'm getting close. I'm getting
Just
warm.
quit, man. Quit while you're behind.
Man,
Just quit.
I haven't eaten for weeks.
So listen. And we definitely going to have to do a podcast on this, but I mentioned some time ago that Lamar Alexander was trying to get some massive changes to the FAFSA. And he was able to get that through. It's going into effect in 2023-24. Like pretty significant overhaul. A lot of the terminology that I have taught you guys in the last few years is all changing. A lot of policy changes. I won't get into all of them now because it's a lot. I'll have to take this up with a special episode. I'll probably do a bonus segment on it. But EFC, Dave, is about to be obsolete and is being replaced with Student Aid Index in 2023.
Oh, wow. Expected financial contribution, you mean?
Expected family contribution. And I'm glad they're getting rid of it because when you think expected family contribution, you think, okay, that's how much they expect my family to contribute. And it's not what it means. So I'm actually really glad they're getting rid of that term. I said they should have buried it a long time ago. But there are a lot of changes coming up. Some are good, some are not good. We'll break them down. We still have a little time, 2023, 2024. But look for that in a future episode. So that is our word of the day, Dave. Let's turn to college hot topics in the news. Dave, take our article away.
Okay, this is a great one. It's very short, so we're going to give the synopsis, and it's going to give a lot of grist for the grind. Supreme Court will hear NCAA case on college athlete pay, and the case could upend the college sports business model as we know it. Leah, Nylen, and Juan Perez Jr. From Politico. So essentially, the High Court said Wednesday that it will hear an appeals filed by the NCAA in one of its member conferences over a May decision that found the group's limits on a player's compensation violate antitrust law. Essentially, the NCAA accused the lower courts of quote-unquote judicial micromanagement and said their rulings would fundamentally transform college sports by, quote, blurring the traditional lines between colleges and professional athletes. I'm just going to say one more thing, and we're going to open this up for discussion. Basically, a group of current and former players challenged the NCAA rules that prohibited athletes from receiving many forms of compensation, monetary compensation. And following a 2019 trial, a federal judge found that the restrictions were anti-competitive and said the NCAA must allow colleges to offer students education-related benefits such as graduate school scholarships, study abroad opportunities, or computers for educational use. And that decision was upheld in 2020 by the U.S. Court of Appeals, the Ninth Circuit. So essentially, this is now going all the way to the Supreme Court. Sort of a complex series of paragraphs, Mark. Why don't you break down exactly what I just said?
Well, Dave, I don't know if I'm going to start by breaking it down. I want to start actually by providing even a little bit more historical context and going back and looking at a 1984 decision, which was the last time the Supreme Court heard an NCAA decision. But I'll absolutely read a little bit here. There's a lot of reading on this one, so hope we don't lose you. But this is actually an ESPN article. It says, for the first time in more than 3 decades, the Supreme Court will hear a case involving the NCAA and what it means to be a college athlete. The High Court on Wednesday agreed to review a court decision in an antitrust lawsuit that had been blurred the line between student athletes and professionals by removing caps on compensations that major college football and basketball players. And that's important. We want to make sure everybody understands this. It's not all sports, but major football too, not minor.
Right.
And basketball receive. And so it says the case will be argued in 2021 with a decision expected in June. Then this is the part I really want to get to. It's a little bit of the historical context. The last time the Supreme Court heard an NCAA case was 1984. So we're talking 36 years ago. And that was NCAA versus the Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma. And a lot of people feel like that changed the way college football could be broadcast on television, with actually set the stage up for the multi-billion-dollar media rights and contracts and for conference realignment as schools moved to different conferences because of the huge money that was involved. So that was a shape-shifting decision, in many ways fundamentally changed all the economics of TV when it came to college football. And that's according to Gabe Feldman, the director of sports law at Tulane. And ever since that 84 decision, courts have been relying on that language to interpret different antitrust laws and how it relates to player compensation. So the High Court's decision here, the so-called Alston case, comes after a 3-judge panel of the 9th U.S. Circuit of Appeals ruled in May that the panel upheld a lower court ruling barring the NCAA from capping education-related compensations and benefits. So the interesting thing about this is the case was brought by a former West Virginia football player, Shawnee Alston. That's why some people call it the Alston case. And the narrow ruling in that case, which required any compensation to athletes to be tethered to education, it had both sides claiming victory. And now the fact that the Supreme Court is picking it up is actually also being celebrated by both sides. So you have Donald Remy, the NCAA's chief legal officer, issued a statement saying, we are pleased that the court will review the case. And then you have the NCAA and its members continuing to believe that college campuses should be able to improve the student athlete experiences without never ending litigation amongst changes. And then you have Jeffrey Kessler, who's the lead attorney for the plaintiff, saying it's time for the Supreme Court to reaffirm that big multi-billion-dollar business of Division I basketball and FBS football. FBS are like the top 80 schools in all the country. I think it's 80. Could be off on that. Are fully subject to antitrust review, and that the era of exploiting athletes who provide the labor must come to an end. So it's fascinating that you've got both sides kind of doing a little chest pumping and thinking, okay, this is the opportunity for vindication and validation. Of course, the NCAA is trying their best to preserve the amateur aspect of college admissions. And the players are saying there's nothing amateur about what I do. You're making multi-million dollars off of my likeness, and I can't even make money off jersey sales.
Correct.
And so it's time for this to come to an end. So it's going to have some pretty significant ramifications in terms of where we go. Now, we've seen recently that a decision did come down that said that players can get cost of attendance, which would allow up to $5,600 or more for them to receive above their scholarships. And part of that is because they can't work. They literally can't go out and get a job because it takes all of their time. And so nobody really knows which way the court's going to go. But if this is as significant as the 1984 case, Dave, it could really transform college athletics.
Yeah, and it's actually very narrow. Actually, it was much more narrow than I thought because, you're talking about computers, okay, couple grand, graduate scholarships, couple, 10, 20,000. Mark, that the money that we're talking about is in the hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. The fact is that Forbes did a profile on University of Alabama football and estimated that in direct and indirect monies paid, the football program of Alabama is worth over $1 billion per year to that school. We know that the sneaker contracts, the Nike sneaker contracts that they have with individual teams offer in the tens and millions of dollars for some of the highest ranking programs. So to me, okay, so the Supreme Court says, yeah, you can buy the kid an extra computer.
I know.
It's really missing the point.
Well, I mean, here's something to prove your point. So all you have to do is look at the compensation of coaches and you realize how much of a business it is. So the going price for a weightlifting coach, Dave, in the SEC right now, is over $500,000 for a weightlifting coach. Yeah. Now, remember, this is not an offensive or defensive coordinator or a head coach. So offensive and defensive coordinators are now 1.5 million plus, with a couple making over 2 million. Yeah. And head coaches, there are quite a few that are north of 7 million, like quite a few. Yeah. Up there in the $9-10 million. In fact, Jim Harbaugh, who has a complete losing record at Michigan, is reining in $9+ million just because of ticket sales and all of the other thing, alumni donations and contributions. And then, of course, money that can be made from television and other sources. So it is huge business. How this actually trickles down. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for is something like LeBron James has gotten really behind. And that is for players to be able to make money off of their jersey sales because what that does is that has the ability to really potentially have them make a lot of money. But then the other side of the argument is that it just becomes a bidding war. And, where does it corrupt the process where you lose all aspect of amateurism? But I would come down on the place that there hasn't been amateurism for a long time. You've got people making millions and millions and millions of dollars off of the backs of most of the players who won't make any money professionally. And they're literally sacrificing their bodies. And, I'm sorry, but I don't have a problem with them being compensated because to me, they're being exploited right now.
And Mark, look, I got to bring in the racial aspect of this. I mean, I think that there is racism and there is a plantation mentality involved here. The fact is, especially with football, we know that a good percentage of the players are African American or Hispanic. A good percentage are lower income. The vast majority of those kids do not graduate. A lot of those kids end up with life-altering injuries, and not to mention the whole CTE brain injury debate. Mm-hmm. And we bring these kids in and we use them as Roman gladiators, as quasi-slave labor. I'm just going to put it out there. I see a slave labor mentality to these coaches. You use them up. They come in as uneducated as they left. They get nothing. When these kids graduate, they have nothing. So what? They were on the Alabama football team. If you don't make the NBA, you have no earning potential.
That would be the NFL, Dave, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
That would be the NFL.
And the NBA. Yes. NBA. Sorry. But you know what I mean.
No. I mean, there's a lot of truth to where you're saying. And the reason why you see it, where you really see it is this whole focus on, no, they shouldn't be able to go, that why don't they go off and get their college education before I've never even heard anybody even make that argument about tennis players. And the whole baseball system, is not set up that you go graduate from college and if you can go single A, double A, triple A. Hockey, same thing, where there's massive resistance against people who have the ability to earn a lot of money staying, and people say, no, they need to get their degree. Most people don't care about whether they get their degree. They just want to be entertained. like you said, in like a gladiator kind of way. So I do think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I really would agree wholeheartedly. So it's good that you threw that out there.
And there's a great autobiography that I want to read. I just read the reviews of it, of John Thompson. Remember the great
Of course, he was always outspoken about students not being exploited. Yeah.
But he said the process will correct itself in basketball because increasingly kids who are NBA quality out of high school, just like LaMelo Ball, are choosing either to go overseas, to play overseas, to actually join the NBA G League, or just to simply sit out a year.
Well, I'll tell you what's really going to change is because, I mean, the commissioner of the NBA has already clearly signaled that the NBA is going to is very receptive to kids going from high school straight to the pros. And so you can expect that in the next contract, negotiations. And really what happens with the one and done rule is kind of a farce, because what happens is one and done means I come for one semester, play basketball, in effect drop out, and start preparing for the NBA draft. And what are you going to do to me? And the people that are good enough to do that are making the institution so much money that there's oftentimes turning the other eye, turning the other cheek, and not coming down. And so in effect, you really have somebody just on the campus to play their sport to make a lot of money. And don't criticize them for that. I mean, if an engineer had the ability to go to school for 3 or 4 months and turn around and parlay that into
$50 million.
Yeah, of course they would do it. If they had the ability to drop out before they graduated with with a signing bonus that's bigger than most people make in their lifetime, of course they would do it. So, there's a lot of puritanical mindsets about, we're corrupting amateurism, but like, who's kidding who? Like, where's the amateurism in the amount of money that the coaches and people, it's not just the coaches, everybody's really making money but the players. Look at the contracts people like Dick Vitale make, in the broadcasting community. They're making multi-millions of dollars. Everybody's making money except for the people that are sacrificing their bodies. And I know there's a lot of people that say they are getting a scholarship. They should be grateful for that. I don't think most people like the idea of making like a penny off of their work when they're bringing multi-millions of dollars into somebody else. If you're working in an organization, and you're getting paid, name the price, doesn't matter, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand. And meanwhile, you're making somebody like, 1,000, 10,000 times that. You're going to want to sit down and say, hey, this isn't right. I'm being exploited.
Now to put this in perspective, Mark, I think it's important for us to reaffirm that this only affects a sliver, a small little percentage of actual students that participate in sports in college. The vast majority of sports are not basketball and football, whether it be swimming or whatever. And even in the football, you are truly talking about Division I and maybe Mark, the top 30, 40 schools? What's the range
what you're talking about are sports that make money for institutions. Right? Football and basketball, for the most part, pay for all the other sports.
Right.
And there, occasionally you get some exceptions, like, UConn's women's basketball. That's a one-off, There's a few ice hockey programs that are one-offs. But there are very few other sports that bring money into institutions.
Right.
That's really, and that only is happening at the highest level. So, so when you're at that level where you're bringing multi-millions into the institution, that's where it becomes a lot more controversial. But, I don't think we need to linger too much on this, Dave. This is more of an interesting article that's happening as a trend, and it could change college athletics. It's not necessarily what 99.9% of our articles are, which is something that our average applicant can hopefully apply to their lives and their college search. Like, this is not one of those. It's just kind of an FYI, if you want to keep in touch with what's happening within the realm. And if college athletics is important to you, if this ends up being as substantial as the 84 decision, it drastically changed college athletics. And that's the reason why we brought it up.
That's right.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just in the sense of how truly elite these kids are. I just watched a 5-minute video of Seth Curry making 105 three-pointers in a row. And I
Is that
think
insane?
that's right. And I think when I was in high school, my record was 12.
I'm surprised it wasn't 2. I saw you out there jacking up those bricks, man.
That's right.
You already shared your story about the Princeton coach told you when you tried to make the JV team at Princeton. We already know about your lame game.
Well, some people become sports superstars and others become co-podcasters. What can I say?
Hey, what are you trying to say, man?
Well,
thought you were going to say emergency medical doctors.
I was about to say I was right behind you in the draft, my buddy.
Hey, listen, Dave, before we transition to talk about some other topics, you have your own announcement today, man. You got the shot in December. What was it like for the rest of us who haven't got the COVID shot?
Wow, it was great, man. I was working in the emergency room. I didn't even know I was going to get the shot. And all of a sudden, one nurse says, Dr. Williams, come up now and get your COVID shot. And I was like, whoa. So I went upstairs. She said, put down your arm. She jabbed me in the arm. She said, sign this and said, see you in 3 weeks' time. I was like, great. I had, my arm was no worse than the flu shot. I know other people have had some mild reactions. I had no reactions whatsoever. I'm extremely grateful because, I truly believe that if I was back in Chicago, I probably wouldn't be getting the shot until maybe February. So, God put me in the right place at the right time because, friends are saying, how'd you get the shot? And I was like, I have no idea.
Hey, you're a frontline worker, man.
Frontline worker.
I was expecting you to be tapped in December or early January. So good for you.
Yeah,
good for you.
Further proof that the head nurse likes me. So what can I tell you?
There you go.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Anika, in all of our euphoria last week about Christmas and all of that, we forgot to do our Twitter follower countdown.
Once again. Second time, right?
Yeah. So we're going to do that today. But I also have to tell everybody, Happy New Year. This is the New Year's Eve edition when it goes live.
Oh, it will be. That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
We're recording it on the 28th, but everybody else will get it on the 31st. So it's going to take me a long time to get used to saying 2021. I'm one of these people who it's April and I'm still writing 2020 on everything. The older I get, the worse it gets.
Oh, you're going to be better next year, Mark.
I've just accepted the fact that it's not going to change. All right. Coming in number 6 in our Twitter countdown with almost, should I go back and give 10, 9, 8, and 7? Or should I
was about to say, so you have to make up one, right?
Yeah.
From last week?
So do I do 2 now or do I just?
Yeah, let's give them 2.
I give them 2 today to our people?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let me go back here and do a little backlog and count back. So at number 10, we had Ariana Grande. Number 9, Ellen DeGeneres. Number 8, Lady Gaga. Number 7, Donald J. Trump with 23 days left, and I'm counting them down.
And how many hours in seconds?
And number 6, Taylor Swift. Almost 88 million Twitter followers. Are you a Taylor Swift person? Yes, no?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
maybe no.
I appreciate some of the stuff she's done on, some of the stances she's taken on some things that she believes in, but I don't know much other than that she's a singer.
Yeah.
I think she lives in Tennessee, I think.
Oh, really?
And I don't know much about number 5 either. I guess I don't know much about pop culture. Cristiano Ronaldo.
I have never heard of that name. Who is that?
Oh, gee. This is really bad. I just exposed myself. It says our only sports personality on the list.
Oh, Mark. Yeah.
I exposed myself.
I get a pass on that.
Arguably the best soccer player on the planet.
Oh, yeah, I get a pass for real.
I got busted. Not a soccer follower. It says, along with playing for the Portuguese national team, stints in the biggest clubs in Madrid, Manchester United. So, yeah, shout out. I always knew soccer was popular.
Yeah.
Guess we know it now.
For real.
Cristiano. Oh, this is how bad it is. I thought it was a girl. It was a lady.
Me too. Okay.
I'm looking
Sorry,
at this.
sir.
Sorry. I just know the soccer fans are just shaking their heads.
Yeah,
and saying,
let's not get any negative.
I lost all my sports clout right there. All of it in one little 10-second stint.
We're doing good on the positive emails, Mark. Let's not.
Let's get off this topic. Happy New Year, everybody. Sorry about the Twitters. Anika and I are so grateful for everyone who has financially supported our podcast. It allows us to pay our staff and cover our other auxiliary expenses involved in having a weekly professional podcast.
At the start of every month, we're going to start sending a special gift to anyone who financially supports your college-bound kid.
I will be sending our donors this bonus content once a month directly to your email. The bonus content will be between 10 to 15 minutes in length. Usually it will be a college-related topic that I'm passionate about. Occasionally, it'll be another bonus hot topic in the news segment. Sometimes it'll be an answer to a question that one of our listeners submits to us via email.
And you'll receive these monthly audio blogs for a gift of any amount. We know that $5,000 to one person is $5 to someone else, and we don't want your budget to be a hindrance to you receiving this additional bonus content. So if you want to support our show, just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. And if you've already financially supported our podcast, you will automatically start receiving this bonus content via your email.
This bonus content is our way of letting our financial supporters know in a tangible way how much we appreciate you. And if you have any questions at all about our monthly bonus content, just send your questions our way. That's to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Once again, questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Okay, friends, we are in 153, episode 153, chapter 153 of my book. And you know what, Anika? I'm getting tired of money chapters. We got about 9 of them left.
Did them.
I know. But it's one thing to write them. It's another thing to talk about them for 70 weeks in a row. But we got about 9 money chapters left.
I know it's worth it to somebody out there.
Thank you. This is going to be a little shorty. But the question this chapter asks is, what is the role of the college financial and certified planner when it comes to paying for college? Anika, you read the chapter. What were your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. And like you said, it is a quickie. And it's really this person. Well, first of all, let me just say what I read first. So It's this technical financial person who has this very technical expertise around, obviously related to how you're going to fund your college years, but through trust fund planning, moving assets around, complex questions around 529 plans, tax implications, all that creative fancy stuff. But I guess my question is this an actual title of a person? Like people really are a certified financial aid planner?
So people are certified financial planners and they do all that. And they have a lot of times, they have all their credentials in that field. And there's a small sector that have developed a unique specialization around college.
Oh, so it is a thing. I just didn't. Okay.
Yeah, and it's very rare. I know one in Georgia. I knew one in Pennsylvania, in the Philly area. At least that were good that I knew of.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know this. And basically, what I say in the chapter is there are times when it's in somebody's best interest to use somebody like this. And even that I do college coaching, I have pretty extensive knowledge about the money. There's stuff in here I don't touch. And if I'm asked some of these questions when it comes to trust funds or, moving assets around a lot, or I could do a little bit with that, but especially if people are switching up their college fund plans and want to move from UTMA to an UGMA or UDBUC to a Coverdale or to a 529, that stuff can get pretty complex. And what I would say is that if you have those kinds of situations, also sometimes people have detailed questions about tax implications of various corporations and things. If you have those kinds of questions, and if you're working with somebody, whether it's a school counselor or even independent college coach, most of us don't get deep into the woods on that. Make sure that you ask them, how much experience do you have with my exact situation?
Okay.
That's a question that you should ask. So hopefully they will just volunteer and say, you know what, that's outside of my area of expertise and I'm not comfortable with that. And most of them will that I know. But that's still the question that I would ask. And when it comes to that, it really makes sense to have a specialist because some people have some complex situations. I encounter this about once every 2 years. I have someone that just has this really complicated financial situation. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I can give you a couple people that specialize in this thing, but it's not me.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. But what I want to bring out this chapter is that this person can be worth their weight in salt if you do have one of these, because it can be significant. Now, I was able to help somebody in a semi complicated situation like this last year that I felt I could handle, and it was $100,000 savings for them. Okay. But that was more simple. It was just there was money like in the grandparents' name, and it was just a matter of moving it from the grandparents' name into the parents' name, and it was a 529. But I don't touch trust funds, I don't touch annuities, and I don't touch a lot of these complex things, and most people don't either, school counselor or private college coach. And it's best to get a specialist if you're dealing with some of these complex things. This is usually wealthy people with a lot of resources.
Okay. Gotcha.
I don't find the under-resourced person coming up and asking me a lot of questions about, their trust funds and all the money in their annuities.
Right. Should they ever hit the lottery, though?
Oh, man, that's different. But that's all I had on this, Anika. Anything else you want to share? You think we wrapped it up?
Nope, I think we done it.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, well, let's move over to the question, which really excites me because it's our first question on Twitter.
Hey, Mark,
I don't know what I'm doing on Twitter, but I'm just trying to figure it out. I feel like the person that doesn't know how to swim, and someone just threw him out in the deep end and said, "Oh, you'll learn. Just get here. I'll throw you out."
And you will learn. You got a question. Look at that.
I'm learning, and the question came in, which really excited me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually, all I know is it's an attorney in Massachusetts that's on our Twitter feed, and so you can take it away because I actually thought it was a really good one, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of interesting things that I do want to share. So take it away, Anika.
Okay, so you clearly were excited about that because you just did all my little intro, but that's okay.
Oh. I stole all your thunder.
I mean, it wasn't going to be that thunderous, but What is your Twitter handle again, Mark? What is it? At
171 answers.
Okay, at 171 answers. So thank you, Twitter follower from Massachusetts. He or she asked, they would love to hear tips and strategies about regular decision, since it seems to be the bloodbath that will continue in the RD round. I'm going to let you translate that.
Yeah, well, some of the context is we were having some Twitter dialogue about these really, really low acceptance rates that came out, in early round at a lot of schools. And then that's what led to this question. That's just a little bit of background. But before we kind of dive into that, there are a few things that I do want to say that I think are important. And so while the last couple of weeks, we've spent some time talking about these brutal acceptance rates that came out in the early round. And I'm not going to share all the stats because I shared a lot of them in special episode 1 and 2, but I will share a few more that came out. Yes, it is confirmed. Last week I said, I'm hearing MIT had a 60% increase. Well, now it's out and it's 62%. 62% more apps in 1 year.
Okay.
I never mentioned Columbia, which is an early decision school. They're up 49%. I'm not going to mention some of the schools I mentioned already. I said I was hearing Cornell was in the 30s. Well, it came out, confirmed Cornell at 37%. Some of the other schools I never mentioned that are out this week, Georgetown is up 19%, Tufts up 17%. And just to name a few, and most of them we've named already. A few others actually. Vanderbilt's up 8%, and Wisconsin Early Action up 12%. So there are a few. So apps are up at the most selective schools. However, I am not convinced yet that it's more competitive to get in this year than last year. Now we'll wait. We'll see some more information when it comes out. But it is still quite clear to me that a lot of non-competitive applicants decided to take a shot at certain schools because of the fact that the test scores are no longer being required. not really realizing that admission officers will be able to suss that out pretty quickly. And, they're not going to necessarily like the news that they're going to get. I'm having conversations with different people. I haven't had enough yet to say anything definitively, but based on the conversations I've had so far with admissions people, what I'm hearing is that it's been more competitive for first-gen low income because all the online stuff they did democratized the process, and not having the test scores also encouraged people to apply. But not necessarily for middle income, upper middle, or upper class kids, not necessarily a more competitive pool. That's what I'm picking up so far, but that's only a sample size of about 5 conversations. It's not enough to say it's anything definitive. I want to wait till a lot more data comes out. So that's just a little bit of background, but let's get into the question more specifically. But, let me say one more thing. So far, it's very interesting, Anika, that of all these schools that are way up, none of them were test optional before. It's all the schools that just went test optional this year. None of the previous test optional schools have these soaring numbers. So that's just an interesting tidbit. Right. Okay, so let's get into the question. What can you do in this, really competitive year? Well, first of all, a couple questions to ask. And the first one is, have you applied or not applied yet? Because it's a different answer. So let's say you have not applied yet and you're getting this and you're listening on December 31st. And let's say, you've got a school. And, schools have different deadlines. You know that, Anika. There's schools that are rolling admissions, or schools that are taking applications all the way through the summer, Right. And then there's schools that have, deadlines coming up, January 15th, February 1, all kinds of deadlines. So if you have not applied, well, here's what you can't really do at this point. You really can't change your academic rigor. You can't. Your senior year, your first semester is done. There's nothing you can really do to change the rigor of your classes. So that's not an option. You also really cannot impact your grades, because there's really 3 grades that mostly get looked at when it comes to college admissions. There's schools that look at grades at the end of the junior year. There's schools that ask for a midterm progress report halfway through the fall of the senior year. And there's schools that ask for the first semester's grades. All that stuff's really done. You really can't really change your grades. Mm-hmm. Of course, you don't want to tank them, and you do want to have a strong second semester, but there's not much you can do with your grades. So those are not really options. You also really can't do anything with your extracurriculars. If you think adding some service project in January is going to flip you from accept or deny to accept, it's just not going to happen. You really can't do anything when it comes to demonstrated interest. Too late for that. So really what you're left with for those who have not applied, before I say it, any idea, Nika? What do you think's left?
Apply to a bunch of schools, maybe.
Well, you know what? I'm going to get to that. So that's a great answer, but I'll get to that in a second. So when it comes to schools you already know you want to apply to, though, 2 things: essays and recommendations. It's still not too late for them. First, you want to make sure that a school is going to use essays and recommendations in their evaluation, or you're wasting your time. But if they are, this is a place that you can do something really, really late in the process and have it impact. If it's a school that's using essays and recommendations, you can make sure your essays are as good as possible. That's probably the most important thing you can do right now. It's difficult January to sit here and ask somebody for a recommendation. Okay. Teachers, that's really late to be asking them. But what you can do is, if you have an outside recommender, maybe an employer you work for, maybe your religious leader, you worked for, you're an athlete, you want to coach a recommendation, you're an artist, you want to get you want to get somebody maybe like a drama teacher or musical instructor or an advisor to a club you've worked with, or a Girl Scout or Boy Scout, a leader, someone like that. Yeah, that could be something that is worth doing for schools that consider that. So those are the 2 things that you can really do at this late stage for someone who has not applied. And then the other thing you really can do is what Anika mentioned, and this is really important, is you can broaden your list, and you can add some schools that are on a little less selective side if it's before the deadline. And by the way, if you were deferred, it really is good to take that as a sign. Well, maybe I reached a little too high, and maybe I should add a few schools that aren't quite as selective. So that would be something else that you can do before deadlines. Now, any comments on anything I said there so far, Nika?
I'm anxious for the person who
has applied.
Yeah.
So if you have applied, then there's 2 questions. Have you applied and you just haven't heard anything? Or did you apply and were you deferred? So those are also different. So let's talk about both of them. So if you've applied, which one do you want me to take first? The one that was applied and deferred, or the one that's applied and just hasn't heard back?
Let's do deferred.
Okay. So a couple of weeks ago with Dave in the intro for my admissions tip, I mentioned if you're deferred, follow exactly what a school tells you to do. Don't do more, don't do less. Oftentimes they'll be very prescriptive and letting you know what they want you to do. If you go beyond that, it's overboard. If you do less than that, it's, you're not helping yourself. However, not everybody is as explicit as they should be or as many schools are. So if it's not crystal clear, here's some general pointers if you're deferred. One, I do recommend that you write a reaffirmation letter of your interest in the school. However, you don't want to do that initially after you're deferred. Why would I say that? Any idea, Nika?
When you say initially, you mean like as soon as you get the deferral? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know.
So schools have a tendency when you do it initially to just think it's just a bruised ego. You just got a bruised ego,
really?
Which is a bit of a blow to the ego. And you're also usually not in the best state of mind. So it's best to wait. And a really good time to write this letter is January 15th to the end of January. There's some schools that will actually tell you, if you're in their explicit instructions, that if you're going to write a letter, they'll give you a deadline when they need it by. But once again, those are the schools that clearly lay it out for you. And if it's not a school that clearly lays it out, I do recommend that you have a letter.
Okay, but they give you a deadline, but you're still saying don't do it before January 15th. They're not going to tell you start giving it to me between this date, starting at this date.
Yeah, so the deadlines typically are like the end of January.
Okay.
And I'm saying don't, if you got a deferral letter, well, let's face it, this people are getting this December 31st, but all our podcasts are archived, so somebody could be hearing this 2 years from now, and it could be December 15th, and they got a deferral letter. What I'm saying is don't do it right at December 15th. Don't do it even December 31st. Do it around mid-January. You'll be before any deadlines, and it won't come off like a bruised ego. It'll come out like, you've had a chance to stop, think, reflect, and you're still interested in the school. That makes a stronger statement than the person that just fires off right away. You know what I mean? I really want to come to your school, blah, blah, blah. And also, this letter is not only saying, I really still want to come to your school and reaffirming interest. That's part of the letter. But the other part of the letter is you should have some updates. And by waiting, you give yourself an opportunity to have a little bit more updates. Certainly, you can talk about your grades in the first semester. And there could be something else that might have happened. You might have won an award that you got that semester. You might have had, I'll tell you, one of the students I'm working with right now, she applied for an independent study, and she's looking at the role. She wants to look at the role that media plays in different cultures at defining beauty standards and how it varies from one country to the next. I think that's interesting. And it's just an independent study that she's doing in the spring, and she just got approved for it. That's the kind of thing that you would include in your update. So your letter is a couple things. It's an update of anything, not negative, of course, anything positive, grade updates, awards, new opportunities, anything like that. I'm big on making sure this letter is not the 2 or 3 page letter. Okay. I do not want this letter to be more than 2/3 of a page. In fact, I think half page is even better, but 2/3 of a page max. You give updates, and then you do reaffirm interest. Now, if it was a school you applied early decision to, and you still feel like you would definitely go, if admitted, this is the place for you to tell them that. You need to know that I am committed to come if you end up accepting me in the regular round. You have my word. Now, if that's one of these things that you want to compare financial aid offers, you've got interested in some other schools, and you don't want to commit to that, then don't say that. Don't overpromise. But if you feel like, listen, I'm still committed to coming, that can make a difference in some cases. You're looking at 2 people that look somewhat equal. One is committed to come, one isn't. Because a lot of times when people are deferred, they just lose interest and say, forget it, bump this. I had a student like that I worked with last year. She applied early decision to a very, very selective school. In fact, her father had even gone to that school, and she didn't get in. And she's like, I have no interest at all in even applying anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Forget them. And so she lost all interest, and she ended up getting into an equally selective school in the regular round. So sometimes people lose interest. So schools are interested in knowing that you are still interested in coming. So you reaffirm your interest, you give updates, you do a 2/3 of a page letter, and you do it mid to late January. Any questions on that, Anika?
No, I think we got it.
So that's the student who's deferred. Now, if you're not deferred and it's just a regular admission, and, a lot of regular admissions release decisions in March, mid to late March, and you've got updates, what do you do? Well, first of all, the updates should be fairly significant. It shouldn't be something really, really, really minor. Like, my grade went up from an 87 to an 88.5. No. Okay. No, none of that. One thing I don't encourage people to do here is to actually write their admission counselor, because the admission counselor is slammed with reading. And so I actually think it's best not to write the admission counselor directly. The one exception would be if you had a very unique relationship with the admission counselor. Let's say they interviewed you. Let's say you had a visit and you had a long conversation. You really connected with them. And smaller schools, sometimes the liberal arts and sciences schools, they are really big on a lot of communication, more so than the national universities. So that could be an exception. But the students should know that they have kind of, they really kind of clicked and connected. In that case, they could write the admission counselor. But otherwise, I would just use the general admission email for this. Okay. And you can send your updates there. And if a decision hasn't been made. But once again, they should be fairly significant. Otherwise, it'll be like, don't waste my time.
Yeah, but okay, let's go back to that grade thing, though, because what if it goes from a B to an A? Is that significant?
Well, typically what you'll want to make sure that happens is just that your semester grades get submitted. Or if it's even later, let's say you're on the trimester system. And so you have a second trimester that comes in, and those grades come in mid-February, and decisions are coming out in March. Then you would just want to make sure that the updated grades are submitted and that they're included in the file. Okay. And so that's kind of a straightforward thing really with grades, because you can just have an official transcript sent with upgrades and just ask if they could be included into the file. So grades I think I used grades earlier. It's probably not the best example. It's better to use other things, more like awards and unique opportunities.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. For grades, it's really best just to get the transcript and just ask if it can be included in the file. Any other questions?
Nope. I think we're good.
So we covered a lot of categories here. We covered, we covered the person that hasn't submitted an application yet. We covered the person that has submitted and they were deferred. We covered the person that has submitted and they haven't heard yet. And I also just really wanted to reaffirm that I'm not convinced regular admission is going to be a bloodbath. I still stand by what I said earlier a few weeks ago when I went over changes in admission. I still expect it to be easier to get into the vast majority of colleges this year. It's just a very small number at the top that are getting this glut of apps. And it still remains to be seen whether they'll actually be more selective. In many cases, they'll take more students from to help out with their funding. And in other cases, I think they're going to be, similarly selective to what they look like before. So I want to kind of, and I think I created a little bit of this by giving some of these eye-popping early numbers. I think I created a little bit of the perception that it's even harder to get into now than before. I'm not convinced of that. It's too early to tell. Let's just see how it all plays out.
Okay.
So what do you got going on, Anika? Any New Year's plans? Any New Year's partying with your daughter?
No, we were going to travel, but I changed my mind because
Were you going to? I always want to say Macon when it's not. It's that word with the B.
Yeah, Barnesville.
Yes. Is that where you were going? Barnesville?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. But I just am going to literally sit still and just chillax into 2021. What about you?
Yeah, so our big thing really was the Christmas break. Karis literally just left, going back to the big Charlotte for a while. And, there's we're just trying to not get COVID, to be honest.
Right. Exactly.
I'm serious.
That's the goal. Those are our plans. There you go.
Did you hear there's this new strand out that's 70% more contagious?
I don't want to hear about that. I haven't.
I mean, the good news is they're saying that the vaccine they think works against the new strand.
Oh, really?
But all that's making me do is just want to, cloister on up in my house even more and be a little recluse.
Well, it's funny. I listened to a podcast last night where they say if you all think that the first part of 2021 is not going to be as crappy as 2020, then you are confused.
I know.
In terms of this,
no, I think 2021
stuff.
is really going to be a tale of two halves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it looks like widespread use of the vaccine should be out by June, and so I'm expecting from July till December, the restaurants I think are going to be packed and people are going to be traveling. I think people are just going to be busting out to get their old life back.
Yeah.
But who knows? None of us know the future. Who knows?
Who knows?
I just know I hope I never go live through another pandemic in my life. I'm pandemicked out. I'm serious.
And that. Yeah.
One is enough.
Hey, I think we can all agree.
Awesome. Well, you take care, and next time I see you, it will be 2021, Anika.
Yes, it will, and I'm excited.
Yeah, and we only have 18 weeks, and we can put this book to bed.
Yeah, I listen. I opened a book, and I had these little bitty section of pages left. I was like, "What is happening? Oh my god!"
Yeah,
we're all in the back of the book.
691 page book, and I think we're up to the 600, getting to 600, almost at 600.
Like
I'm looking at this 580 something. We're getting there, so we'll look forward to that, and that'll be good. Believe it or not, I mean, the book chapter part is probably my least favorite part of the podcast. It's okay. I mean, I love the podcast, but I've been in this book. I was researching it seriously heavy for 16 and 17, and it came out in December of 17. The Kindle version came out in January of 18. I've been all immersed in this book for 4 years. I'm ready to just talk some other college admission stuff. Just being honest, keeping it real. All right, friends, it's part 3 for Chika, and we've been getting great feedback on the Chika interview. I think you'll enjoy this one as well. In part 3, Chika talks about the academic experience at Miami. How hard are the classes and what are they like? She also talks about the MSP program at Miami. What's that all about? She talks about what life is like pre-COVID versus what it's been like post-COVID, and how being a student during COVID has changed her educational experience. And I asked her about a couple of stereotypes about the U. Are they true or are they not true? She shares her opinion about a couple of stereotypes about the U. Listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
Let's talk a little bit about the academic experience. What class would you say has been your most fun, and what class has been the hardest?
I have loved my psychology classes. There's just something about psychology and just how it relates to the world. I love psychology. It's very interesting to me. It just makes so much sense, and I retain it very easily. Love psychology.
You liked it in high school.
I did.
I remember you took
really
AP Psych in high school and you loved it. I remember that.
I just love it. I took social psych this year. It was one of my favorite classes. I absolutely love it. Difficult class. I've taken a lot of them. I would say that Orgo was kind of difficult.
I'll tell people what Orgo is. I know that's a little slang term.
Orgo is organic chemistry, which is the second. If you're going to be pre-med, you have to take general chemistry, and then you take organic chemistry, which is there's a lot of bonds and structures and reactions, essentially. And that was, I found very, very difficult. I think that was my first really big class. I was just whoa, struggling here. So that one was really difficult for me. And then I would say physics is another hard class that I'm taking still. I took the University Physics 1, which is calc-based physics this semester, and I'm taking calc-based physics 2 next semester. So that is an interesting endeavor that I will be planning ahead for.
So I'm sure you know this, but Miami has that pathway where if you're really doing well as an undergrad, you can automatically get accepted right into their med school and just stay on there. Is that something that you would consider?
Yes, that is called the MSP program that we have here. And I've heard a lot of just mixed reviews from that. It's not something that I would definitely like shut out, but it is binding at the same time. So you always kind of want to keep your options open. I know a lot of upperclassmen have told me that they've had friends that like they got accepted and then they declined it and then they ended up somewhere like Johns Hopkins and other places. So it's just like, it is something that I would be interested in, but it's not something that's just like Miami ride or die. I don't want anywhere else. I just want to keep my options open. And just when you just go, especially just talking to other pre-meds, there's just so many different routes to like get to medical school, or there's other things like DO school, which is like osteopathic school, which is just a more holistic version of like the MD program. So I'm just trying to keep my options open.
That's smart. So you've referenced Corona, COVID-19 a couple times. You're one of the people that's had the privilege of being a college student without Corona, with Corona. Let's talk about that. How did COVID-19 change the college experience for you?
It was definitely an adjustment, like in the spring, halfway through the semester, having to go home, having to pack up, especially being out of state. That was very, very difficult. It was very hard. And it's like, I had to pack up my whole dorm. I didn't really know where to put my stuff. It was very, very hard. And then it was just an adjustment on like my part and the professor's part in terms of moving on to this new like Zoom university, online classes, everything like that. That was new, but we managed to get through it. And I'm really grateful that my school had like the pass fail option. So in some classes where it just wasn't working, it was just like you had that safety net of it not like damaging your GPA or your record too much. And then this year we came back and everything is kind of just, we're ready for it. And some classes are fully online. Some classes are hybrid versions where you come in for a couple of days and are online for the other days. And that was it was very interesting. I'm very grateful that Miami allowed me to come back. And I would just say that it's a very interesting semester. I don't think that I would say I would go back and do it fully remote because we did have the option to do that. But I will say it was just very, very difficult being online. You're not in a class as much, and sometimes it's just really hard to have things explained to you over like Zoom. And then it's not even the learning I think is the hardest. I just think it's the assessment, because a lot of, especially like organic chemistry, where it's a lot of like molecule drawing based, it's very hard to do that and assess that online. So I feel like that was just a big difficulty in terms of the classes, where it's a lot of like, previously it was very based on like year work, writing things out, all this kind of stuff. And when you do things online, you run into a lot of multiple choice or typing things out. And then the classes where neither one of those work, I feel like it was definitely a drawback in a lot of classes. And I know a lot of people, I think in general, there was the consensus that it was just really, really hard, because it's just like you're trying and just like the assessments aren't necessarily what you want to be, and it's not always reflective of what you know. So that was just kind of like, I think, a frustrating theme that was running through it, like me and a lot of people surrounding me.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
The recommended resource for episode 153 is the book College Admissions Essentials. And I love the subtitle of this book, which is A Step-by-Step Guide to Showing Colleges Who You Are and What Matters to You. The book was written by Ethan Sawyer, better known as the Essay Guy. And at first I was a little skeptical. I'm like, what's the Essay Guy doing writing a comprehensive college admissions book? But what Sawyer did in this book is he interviewed over 100 of the leading college admission experts in the field of college admissions, and they share their wisdom here. The book's a recent book, came out in 2020, and I like the fact that the book doesn't rely on gimmicks and it doesn't overpromise, but it focuses on identifying your authentic self and presenting your authentic self to colleges. One of my favorite things about the College Admissions Essentials is that there's a separate chapter for several very important topics, such as international students, homeschool students, students interested in HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges, students with learning differences, LGBTQ students, undocumented students, transfer students, first-generation students, students interested in women's colleges, low-income students, and veterans. I like how the book uses these exercises to bring out what is deeply in you. There are a lot of niche books on college admissions on various topics such as getting scholarships, writing essays, athletic recruitment, etc. Those books are great, and I've recommended them often right here in this podcast. This book is a comprehensive college admissions book, and it covers most of the topics related to college admissions. And it deserves to be in the conversation with my two favorite comprehensive college admissions books, Admissions Matters by Springer and Reader and College Admissions by Robin Mamlet, two other books I've recommended during the recommended resource section. In fact, you can see every recommended resource we've ever recommended by going to yourcollegeboundkid.com and clicking the resource tab. We have links that will either take you right to the book to purchase or to the website. We started these back on episode 28. We will now return to my interview with Chika about her experience at the University of Miami in her freshman and her sophomore year. So let me ask you this. You hear about, we're going to have everybody back, but we're going to social distance. But then college students are college students. So do you feel like social distancing works in a college environment, or do you feel like that's just kind of all talk, but students are going to do their own thing anyway?
Students will be students and do their own thing. I will say that. But it also just depends on the tone of the campus. I would say it was my experience on campus this year with social distancing and all these placements set in place to keep us safe was very, very different from the tone that I saw in a lot of like the southern schools like Alabama or UGA or Clemson. Like it was very, very different. My school took it very seriously, and they even hired these people called public ambassadors that their job was to just walk around and tell everyone social distance, put your mask on. Like that, they walked all over campus. If you weren't wearing your mask, they would give you one. If you didn't have one, like masks were mandatory. There were no tailgates. Like a lot of things were canceled. And if you were able to do an in-person event, it was major social distancing, and it was put in place, which I appreciated because we were able to go the entire semester, no big corona breakout or anything like that. We weren't sent home. Whereas I go on social media and I go to like my friends at UGA or anything like that, and it's just like, oh, they're having tailgates. They're having their formals and semi-formals. I see in the pictures, I'm not seeing any masks. I'm like, oh, are we in the same like earth and state? Because I like my school would not let that fly. So I think college students will be students, and even with all the things in place at my school, I know definitely like just being in Miami, it's a big temptation for a lot of college students. And like this was like Halloween being on a Saturday. That was a tiny issue on my campus. Like a lot of students, they were students and they went and they did what they wanted to do. But it also just has to do with the tone of the campus. If the campus is very strict about it, then it's workable. It's workable for sure.
Now, let me ask you this. A lot of times you'll hear people say that Miami, it just is just oozing with wealth. There's a lot of like trust fund babies from like New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and an extreme level of wealth at the school. Like, do you think that's true? Do you think that's not true? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it is true just because of the cost of attendance at the school. And when you run into a lot of people who are like, oh, I pay like the full amount. And you're like, oh, word? Really? Like every year you pay this? Oh, okay. Like, okay, I understand. I see. But I would say that it's not a thing where it's just like, if you don't have, like, if you're not a trust fund baby, you're not oozing wealth, that you feel lesser than. I don't. Because I think I've been going here for a year and a half, and it was like the end of the semester that my friend was, she's like, no, Chika, like a lot of people aren't on scholarships, like a lot of people. And I was like, oh, really? Like, it's not something that's thrown in your face, but it's something that if you analyze and like ask around, then it's like, you can find out like who's like oozing wealth and stuff like that. But I don't think in any way that it's anything like you feel lesser than if you're not making a huge amount of money. Because I think like I don't think anybody like, unless you're focused on it, that's not something you like really feel, or it's like apparent. It's not an elephant in the room or anything like that. Sure.
Another thing you'll hear people say is Miami, party school, South Beach. That's just party. I don't know how about the academic environment. So what are your thoughts on that? how much of that's true? How much of that's false? The whole, Miami's party.
I honestly would say that there will be, I think every school parties. I think in college, that's just a lot of people, they're out of their parents' house. It's a different experience for them. I think that's anywhere you go. In terms of that being a Miami thing, I would honestly say that it's there for those who want to take advantage of it, but I don't think that's the culture of our school in any way, shape, or form. Because I would say I'm a pretty outgoing person, and I won't even say that I was partying like everybody swore that I would be doing when I first came to Miami. I was very much I'm gonna stay in my dorm and watch Netflix, truthfully. I didn't really go out like that. I would say that I know plenty of kids who went to UGA or anything like that, and they partied way more than I ever did. So I don't think it's the culture of Miami, but I think it's an aspect that if you have the academic room to do, then it's something you can take advantage of. But I wouldn't say it's the culture, and I wouldn't say that's everybody. You can definitely find the people who like to see on campus. And the one thing that I love about Miami is they have so many events on campus for those who that's not their scene, like South Beach and everything like that. That's not their scene, because they have lots of grants for organizations who plan things on Friday, Saturday, and Thursday nights, because those are the nights that the party people like to go out. So Miami does put some emphasis on encouraging orgs to do different events at night on campus that are just campus events, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I know. I try to debunk that party myth, and a lot of it goes back to just the fact that South Beach is there, right? So it's the whole Miami thing. And then also back in the 80s and 90s when Miami was this football power, I'm sure you've probably seen those ESPN documentaries.
Yes.
It was a little out of control back then. And I know when Donna Shalala came over as president, and I mean, they drastically they nipped that in the bud pretty quickly and put a huge focus on academics.
Very huge. I really do love my school, and I'm someone who's very academically driven, and I feel like at a school that was the connotation that people gave, I thought that I would come and I'd be in my dorm by myself, and I'd feel so out of place because everybody's just raging 24/7, and I'm where are my academic friends? When in reality, I have so many friends who there's just so many events on campus that it's not South Beach. That's not a big thing. And I feel I think that's it's very much more of myth than reality. I feel a lot of people just not even I know seniors that have I've yet to go to South Beach. It's not that.
Well, you're in a medical fraternity. There's sororities. So, so you're going to be with the serious folk.
I think I have a lot of pre-med friends, but I honestly love that I've also ventured out and have friends in the School of Comms and the School of Business. And so I'm even thinking about not just the pre-meds, because it's the pre-meds. They don't have time to be partying like that. And I think of my business friends and my School of Comm friends and people with just a lighter course load. And I honestly would say that it's not always just party. There's definitely a lot of on-campus activities, and just the campus is beautiful. So I think it's just a lot of just relaxing and enjoying taking in your scenery on campus too.
Next week in the news, California's rejection of affirmative action affects university admissions. An interesting article by Lindsay Augustine and Andrew Toulouse of ScottScoop.com. Mark and Anika will discuss, what advice do you have if I want to appeal the aid award I received? Our question from a listener is, how do I get an opportunity to do research with a professor? Our interview is the final part with Chika Nwosu, my experience at University of Miami for my freshman and sophomore year. And our college spotlight swings back to the West Coast with the University of Oregon.
And by the way, don't think you guys don't have impact. So somebody wrote in, I forgot, Dave, that we have our surveys up on the website, which, by the way, we encourage you all to complete if you haven't done it. You go to yourcollegeboundkid.com. I think it's under the About Us section, or maybe there's just a link that says survey, and it gives you an opportunity to have a little influence in how we shape our show. And I actually forgot about our survey. And I'm like, let me go back. And there were some really, really good new entries. And one of them I read said, absolutely love the college spotlights, but can you please add some more West Coast schools? So that caused a shift, and we moved to Oregon next week. So we do listen to what you say. And please fill out that survey if you have not done it. By the way, we try to rotate, so you can go on the website. We have almost the same number of spotlights that we've done on the West Coast versus the Midwest versus the Southwest versus the Southeast versus the Mid-Atlantic versus the New England area. We're trying to keep it as equal as possible, but speak up, and it's your chance to share. And by the way, Sylvia spoke up this week, got a message from her saying, you ditched me again. No USF. So I said, okay, we're definitely doing USF this week. I don't need a ditched me again message. Sylvia, this is for you. I know this is a school you're really taking a serious look at. And by the way, I haven't been at USF in about 5 years since I was there. And so I learned quite a bit of things actually in preparing for this. And I was quite impressed with a lot that I learned. So USF, founded in 1956, is part of the State University of Florida, and it is the fourth largest school in Florida. But check this out, Dave. The fourth largest school in Florida has 51,000 students.
Wow.
So you say 51,000 students, and it's only the fourth largest? Was that a mistake? No. Florida has gargantuan colleges. It's actually the seventh largest university in the country. Only the fourth largest in Florida, but seventh in the country. And, a lot of times students will come to the Georgia schools because they're a little smaller for those who don't like the giant schools that Florida offers. So with when it comes to USF, which you'll hear me refer to that because I don't want to say University of South Florida all the time. One thing that makes it stand out for sure is that you have 3 campuses, and they're all different. And so I'm going to need to kind of talk about this almost from a 3-campus perspective, Dave, with 3 campuses. So you've got the Tampa campus, and that's going to be really big, 1,562 acres. Then you're going to have the St. Petersburg campus, 47 acres. And then you have the Sarasota Manatee campus, which is really only 3 acres. And so those are the campuses, and we'll be talking about all of them individually. So the colors are green and gold. And interesting, the nickname is the Bulls, and the mascot is Rocky the Bull, and it goes back in honor of the state's cattle raising industry. So Rocky the Bull and the Bulls.
Wow.
There are 14 different colleges within the whole university system, 180 undergraduate majors, all the way through to the doctoral level. Now, not surprisingly, this is an R1 university, which you may remember from the last time, or in the past. R1 are very high-level research activity schools, the highest category of research universities in the country. And one of USF's claim to fame is the Intellectual Property Owners Association placed USF first in Florida, 7th in the U.S., and 16th in the entire world when it comes to the number of patents that have been granted. So USF faculty, staff, and students and alumni collectively have over 2,400 patents. So, we'll speak a little bit more about the emphasis on entrepreneurship that's there. Another distinction is home to the National Academy of Inventors and the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame, which is actually located right at USF's Research Park on the southwest side of the Tampa campus. The university has an annual budget of $1.8 billion, and the economic impact on the area is over $4.4 billion. You see how college campuses really have a major economic impact on their areas. As far as sports team, the South Florida Bulls primarily compete in the American Athletic Association, which of course is Division I. Now you're wondering, why is it the University of South Florida? Well, at the time of its founding, USF was the southernmost university in the entire state system. It was founded as a for whites school only, and then 1 year after opening, the university admitted its first African-American student in 1961. Now, the USF St. Petersburg campus opened in 1965 as a satellite campus, and it was known as the Bay Campus at that time, and it sat on the former site of the U.S. Navy Maritime Training Center. And then under the second president, Cecil Mackey, a lot of changes occurred. Under Mackey's regime, several things happened. This is in the 70s. This is when the university opened its medical school. This is when the School of Nursing opened up. This is when the first PhD program opened up. This is when a lot of resources got really allocated to the strength in the St. Petersburg campus. And this is when the new Sarasota Manatee campus opened up as well. And also, Mackey was the first one to coin the term a metropolitan university. And even to this day, USF refers to itself as a metropolitan university. And the Sarasota Manatee campus, by the way, was founded in 1975. USF became the first university in the nation to offer a PhD in applied anthropology. So no school had offered applied anthropology until USF came along and made it a major. Now, one of the things that USF consistently is recognized for is outstanding veteran-friendly services. And so in 2009, USF became the first university in the nation to partner with the United States Department of Veterinary Affairs to offer specialized services for veterans who wanted to take advantage of the new GI Bill. And it's always been very, very veteran-friendly. It's got a real strong commitment there, whether it's through scholarships or through services. And by the way, USF does have some very, very generous merit scholarships that attract some of the strongest students in the country. And this is one reason why it has been one of the nation's largest producers of Fulbright scholars. In 2018, they were one of the very top producers of Fulbright scholars in the whole country. And a lot of things happened in 2018. That was a really good year for USF. It became the third school that was classified as a preeminent university by the state university system. So this is kind of a Florida thing, but they make a really big deal out of becoming a preeminent university. And if you want to become a preeminent university, they have these 12 benchmarks or metrics, and you have to meet or surpass these benchmarks in at least 11 of the 12 categories to become a preeminent university. And so these include things like the quality of the students that you attract, your graduation rates, your retention rates, the quality of your faculty. And so they were trying. And in 2018, they finally hit 11 of the 12. The only one that they missed was one of the benchmarks is your school has to have $500 million in endowment. And since then, they've hit that. So now they're hitting all 12 of the benchmarks. So the only preeminent universities in all of Florida are UF, the University of Florida, Florida State, Tallahassee, of UF, of course, being in Gainesville, Florida State being in Tallahassee, and USF, South Florida. So those are the three in the whole big state of Florida. So let's take a little breakdown and let's look at some of the differences of the campus. So the big, huge campus is the Tampa campus. This is where you're going to get your sports. 16 of the 17 Division I sports are here. This is where you get the 180 majors. If you want nursing or engineering or strong options in the visual and performing arts, if you want lots of choices when it comes to education majors and lots of choices when it comes to computer science majors, this is really the campus for you. 600 clubs, exceptional location, proximity to some of the best beaches you'll find in the United States, close to Busch Gardens, renowned museums, performing arts centers, close to the booming business corridor, lots and lots of internships, restaurant district, all that stuff is close by. Top recreation facilities, including a sweet outdoor pool, an on-campus grocery store. They have a Publix grocery store right on campus. They also have their very own beach, their own private beach, just for the campus, and they have other things as well. And then they have all kinds of opportunities when it comes to research, interdisciplinary research. In fact, as early as your freshman year, you get a faculty mentor who leads you through the process of doing hands-on research. So that's kind of the Tampa campus. Now, the St. Pete's campus, downtown St. Pete, so you're still getting that downtown vibe, but it's a waterfront campus. So it's right at the Bayboro Bay area. It's nestled right in Florida's Gulf Coast, some of the most scenic beauty you'll find. Kayaking, sailing, all that's right there. Strong focus on entrepreneurship on this campus. Strong focus on marine biology. Of course, you'd expect that being right on the bay. Very strong focus on journalism and digital communication. Business is by far the top major there, but some other ones that are quite strong are environmental science and social sciences are strong. It's also a green campus, if that's important to you. And it's also been recognized consistently for its commitment to sustainability. It's not like the Tampa campus when it comes to research, but there still are lots and lots of research opportunities there. And as I mentioned, some of the strongest majors there already. In the social sciences, it's things like criminology, anthropology, economics, political science. But as I mentioned, digital communication, journalism, marine biology, entrepreneurship, those are, and of course, in addition to business, being powerhouses. And then we've got the Sarasota Manatee campus. So this is your really tight knit campus. If you want to be on a campus where 80% of the classes have 29 students or less, then that's going to be this campus. It's got a real strong focus on hospitality and management, communication science and disorders. They do have 30 programs, including grad school, and business is by far the strongest major here on campus. They've got the biology students actually take courses at the local aquarium, and there's a real focus on experiential learning here. So you learn right at the Moat Marine Laboratory, and they've got their own culinary innovation lab. So, Dave, before I get into the stats, what's jumping off the page for you so far, my friend?
I like the fact that you have three campuses. I know Tampa well. I know University of South Florida quite well, and it is a very pretty campus. I've been around it. It's interesting how they've divided it into certain areas of expertise. So one is hospitality, the other in St. Petersburg is more entrepreneurship. And of course, I know the main campus focuses a lot on the healthcare sciences, medical research, and medical school. So it sounds like a pretty solid place. It is surprising that it is so big. I didn't realize it was that big. And it's unique in its position of being, and only since 1961. That actually surprised me as well. It's a relatively new school. So
one of the things you'll find is that Florida is a new state, and so many colleges in Florida were birthed after that. Remember, at the time, it got its name because it was the most southernmost school. And so you'll find consistently when you see Florida schools, if you see one that's started before that, it's kind of a little bit of an eyebrow raiser because most of them have really been around for 60 years or less.
Wow.
It's relatively new. And that's one reason why you don't see the billion dollar endowments in Florida. In fact, there's not a single school in all of the state of Florida that guarantees to meet full demonstrated or calculated need for every student. Because those type of endowments just get built up over usually centuries, not decades.
Right.
And so, most of the institutions in Florida, you'll see them, a lot of them in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and, some in the 80s. By the way, one of the things I love about the three campuses is you do have the ability to take a course at any of the three. So that's kind of nice.
And I was going to ask you just can you give us an idea of the geographic distance? I mean, I know one's Tampa.
No, this is the problem. The nice thing is you can take it, like you could literally, if you didn't get in a course at one, you could take it at another. Or if you don't like the professor reviews for one, you could take it at another. That's the positive side. Here's the bad side to answer your question, Dave. St. Pete is 23 miles southeast of Tampa.
Okay.
Which is not that far, but when you're trying to take a course in, if you're trying to take a course, if you've got a class at 9:10 and your next one is, you want to get another one in and then take another one after, I mean, it's not always great. And then Sarasota is 36 miles south of St. Pete. So if you're trying to go from Tampa down to Sarasota, that's a 60-mile jaunt. But the way you would do that would be you have a schedule where you only have one class like on a Monday or Wednesday or something. And then you could take the trek and then you can hang out on some of the best beaches of the world while you're there too.
That's right. And of
do
course,
some sailing and kayaking. Just take the whole scene in.
And many of the kids have a car. So those distances and the traffic is not crazy by East Coast comparisons. So it's not as bad.
And I'll tell you, if you really work your schedule, I mean, Joy's been a master at working her schedule. She's pretty much arranged her whole time to have Fridays off ever since she's been at college. And so, you can work your schedule in a way so that, look, or maybe you take a couple classes that day on that campus, and you make that your Sarasota day or your St. Petersburg day, and you take classes there on a Tuesday, Thursday, or you do that for one semester. And I always like it when you get to experience different campuses because you get different cultures. And I think with that comes some growth.
Absolutely.
So some stats. So let's start with let's start a little bit with the Tampa campus a little bit here. It's the big bad boy. So it's 32,600 undergrads and another 11,600 grad students. So you're talking about 44,000 of the 51,000 are at the Tampa campus. That's the big one. That's the mother load. 48% acceptance rate, 15% students live on campus. It's got a very high 91% retention rate, which is a very high freshman retention rate. As far as academics, GPA wise, 63% of the students have a 3.75 or higher. Another 16% have a 3.5 to a 3.75. 14% have a 3.25 to a 3.49 GPA. And only 6% of students have under a 3.25. As far as test scores, and as we said a couple of weeks ago, Florida's been a state that hasn't dropped those. But for SAT scores, about 1 out of every 8 students is in the 700s on the test. And then most of the students are in the 600s. So 50% of students in the 600s on the math and 60% of getting in the 600s on evidence-based reading and writing. And then about a third of the students getting under a 600 on the SAT. And when it comes to the ACT, the way it breaks down is about 28% of students getting a 30 to a 36, and then 62% between a 24 to a 29, with 1 in 10 getting under a 24. 34% of students are in the top 10th of their class, 68% in the top quarter of their class. One of the strengths of the school is its diversity, and that's a big draw point, the racial diversity of the school. So the way it breaks down, 49.7% white, 23.2% Hispanic Latinx, 10.6% Black, 7.8% Asian, and then 6.6% international. So that's a really, really diverse group. Pretty much 50% white, 50% everything else. Yeah. And so, so that's kind of your breakdown there. Graduation rates, very fair amount here. 59.7% graduating in 4 years, 71.8% in 5 years, 75% in 6 years. And they do look at weighted GPA, by the way, extra points for AP, extra points for honors. They're pretty much a school that makes decisions really just off test scores and GPA. And the only other factor they're really looking at is Florida residency. So there is a preference given to Florida residency. You're paying taxes. You've got bright futures. You've got Florida prepay. So they do prioritize Florida residents, pretty much test scores and GPA. And that's pretty much it. So it's not a school looking at recs and extracurriculars and essays and demonstrated interest and things like that. Now, the St. Petersburg campus, a lot smaller, 4,334 undergrad, 600 grad school students, so about 5,000 altogether, 40% acceptance rate, but it has a slightly lower GPA and it's slightly less selective than the Tampa campus. 15% people stay on campus at the Tampa campus, 17% at this campus. And for the Sarasota Manatee campus, the smallest of all of them, a little under 2,000 undergrads, another 200 grad students. Pretty selective. They're only taking 32%. So it's tough. 1 in 3 get in. GPAs and test scores very similar to the Tampa campus. I think I mentioned this before. 82% of students are in class, 82% of classes have 29 or less. So this is the place you go if you want the liberal arts and science type of experiment where your teachers and your professors know you. Classes are small and they're discussion based and that kind of thing. Now, when you apply, you do have to pick your campus. So you have to decide which campus you're interested in, but you get a first choice and you get a second choice. And so you pick your campuses, first choice and second choice. They'll try to give you your first and second. You don't get a third, but hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's right.
And when it comes to applications, you have quite a few choices. You can either do the Coalition, the Common App, or you can apply directly off of the school's website. Pretty straightforward process. They do not allow you to self-report your GPA or self-report your test scores. So you'll need official transcripts and official test scores, but all they're really looking at is test scores, academic GPA, and whether or not you're from Florida. Doesn't mean they don't accept students outside of Florida. It just means that the admission bar is just a little bit higher. They do have quite a bit of merit money. You've got to meet that priority date. If you want that merit money, don't miss that priority admission date. But they offer a lot because you can get city, you can get Tampa, you can get St. Pete, you can also get beach, you can get water, and you can get some really strong internship programs. And between all the campuses, you've got your engineering, you've got your business, you've got your nursing, and you've got quite a few strengths in other majors. They do take advantage of the fact that it's a strong hospitality area with some real strong programming there and some real strong entrepreneurship opportunities, which is why you see so many patents coming out of the place. Any final thoughts, Dave, on USF?
Yeah, a couple things. Did you say what the tuition was and the cost all in?
Yeah, I didn't say what the cost is all in. One of the more affordable schools that you'll find out there, Dave. Florida residents, $23,900.
Yep.
Non-Florida residents, $35,000. That's cost of attendance.
Yep.
That's including $5,200 of non-billable expenses in there. So they're when I say non-billable, I'm referring to books and supplies, transportation, personal spending. So if you're just looking at the billable costs for an out-of-state student, tuition, housing, meals, $30,000.
Yep.
Pretty good, you know? Tough to compete with that, which is one of the reasons why they have really been attractive. And, you know, USF is a school that reminds me a lot of Houston, Dave, which was our last college spotlight that we did.
Yeah.
And that this is a school that's really going from having a state-based reputation to more of a national-based reputation, you know, and I've really seen that in the last 10 years, seeing the reputation grow. And with that comes, you know, more and more students that come from different places. I mean, it's now attracting students. I never mentioned this, but from 145 different countries.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. Your College Bound Kid is produced by Dave Visaya of podcastengineers.com. If you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that can really use this information. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Webmaster is Stalianos Dimitru. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. And if you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340. And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like to ask us, and we'll include them on the show, you can just email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions. So send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.